The funeral service for the DCEU is now out playing in theaters. Yeah, this is a review for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Now look, the DCEU has been polarizing since its conception. Since Man of Steel first came out, this franchise has divided fans. So I understand when people are out there putting up headlines like "Ding dong, the DCEU is dead," and "Hooray, it's over, let's move on to James Gunn's DCU." I understand where they're coming from with that, but I am someone who would consider myself a fan of the DCEU. I haven't loved everything that they've done and that has been in it, but the DCEU is something that has brought me happiness in the past. I've enjoyed a lot of what they've done with the DCEU in all of its imperfections. So I did go into Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom very trepidatious, but I was hoping that they were able to land this thing on its feet and end it on a little bit of at least a solid note. It doesn't even have to be a high note, just end it on a solid note. Yeah, they didn't do that. Let's start off with some of the positives of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, because there's a couple. There's three in particular. The first one is the action sequences. They're fine. They're helmed perfectly well, and I thought that some of them were kind of fun. Second positive, Patrick Wilson. I thought Patrick Wilson, he was one of the better characters, one of the better actors. We'll talk about that later on in this review. In this entire movie, I didn't really care or think much of Patrick Wilson in the first Aquaman, but I enjoyed what he brought to this film and the way he played off Jason Momoa. And that brings me to my third positive of the movie, Jason Momoa. Look, he's being Jason Momoa in this movie. He brings the energy, he brings that positive vibe, he brings the chaotic fun that Jason Momoa just embodies, and occasionally he'll wear an Aquaman costume. Other than that, this movie is a real embarrassment to the old regime of Warner Brothers of how they handled DC. And it's no secret that this movie was originally scheduled to come out a year ago. It was supposed to come out and compete against Avatar: The Way of Water. They pushed it a year. They were doing extensive reshoots on this thing. And this movie, I don't know what it looked like in the state before they did the reshoots, but if this is the fixed version of the movie, I don't want to see the broke version. This movie is all over the place with the story that it wants to tell. There's a subplot in here with Arthur being a dad that quickly goes nowhere and kind of just dies off. Then you've got this global crisis storyline going on the land that kind of just comes in and out of the movie. You forget that it's even a part of it for the majority of the runtime. And then you got Black Manta and his revenge quest against Aquaman. And look, Yahya Abdul, I thought, had nothing to work with in this movie. It's not that he's a bad actor. It's not that he's a bad villain. He's just really badly executed and placed into this movie, because in the first Aquaman movie, he's set up and then quickly sidelined as a tease of yeah, come back in the sequel. Check out what Black Manta's gonna do. And then they already have this semi-compelling rivalry between Black Manta and Aquaman, but the movie, for some reason, decides to add a second layer onto Black Manta's revenge in this movie by adding this bigger overall threat that was so unnecessary and kills any chance of me getting invested in this rivalry between Aquaman and Black Manta. Let's talk about some of the performances in this movie. They're pretty bad. If you're not a fan of Amber Heard, I know she's a pretty polarizing figure nowadays. She is in this movie. She's all throughout it. So for some of you, that's gonna make you mad, but if it makes you feel any better, she's horrible. She's horrible in this movie. Now, I'm not going to just attack Amber Heard because I know that's the easy thing to do, but it's not just Amber. There's a lot of actors in this movie that I thought were bad. Like Nicole Kidman, she doesn't look like she wants to be here whatsoever. Ralph Lundgren, he doesn't look like he wants to be here. I don't know if these are the reshoot segments where they just were bored out of their minds. They'd rather be anywhere else, but they felt like they were putting nothing into this dialogue. And I can't really blame them, because the dialogue in this movie, it was not very good at all. This dialogue is clunky, it is riddled with cliches, and the way that these actors read off their lines, it is not engaging, it is not interesting, it is incomprehensible at times, because there's so much going on in this movie that requires so much exposition. I didn't always fully understand what exactly they were talking about or what was going on. Also, Randall Park's in this movie, and he feels very out of place. He's kind of the scientist that aids Black Manta. He's also kind of there, I think, for comic relief, but he wasn't very funny. At least what he was doing, what he had to say, wasn't very funny. And the humor in this movie falls with such a thud. There was one moment that involved Patrick Wilson running that kind of got a chuckle out of me, but other than that, the jokes in this, they fall so flat. They feel like you're sitting at a comedy club where the comedian is not funny. You just want to sink into your seat and disappear. And the worst part about it is it's very dull. This movie is dull. This movie is boring. This movie moves at a snail pace. Jason Momoa is doing everything he can to keep the energy up. I mean, the action sequences, like I mentioned before, when they're on screen, I think they're done well enough. And Atlantis does still look kind of cool. I like the creature designs. I like all the work that went into the production. But this is a hollow movie. It's an empty movie. I felt absolutely nothing while watching this movie. I find it hard to believe that this is fully James Wan's movie. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that happened behind the scenes that we don't know about. But this really is a bummer of an ending to the DCEU. Obviously, this is not how they intended for the DCEU to end. They probably were planning a lot more installments when this movie was in production before the new regime and James Gunn came in and took over DC. But regardless, this is the last DCEU movie, and I think that it just encapsulates everything that was wrong with the DCEU, how it just never found its footing, it never got going, and it never fully connected with the audience, because my auditorium tonight, pretty empty. I'm not going to bury the lead here, guys. There was not very much in this movie that I liked at all. Jason Momoa and Patrick Wilson, they were kind of fun together, but that's like 10% of the movie. The action sequences add another 10%. I probably only liked about 20% of this movie. The acting was horrendous. The dialogue was horrendous. The story was all over the place and not engaging. They ruined Black Manta with an unnecessary addition. I hate to say it. I hate to say this is how the DCEU is going out for me, but I don't like Aquaman and Lost Kingdom, and I'm not recommending that you check it out. And with that, guys, the DCEU has been laid to rest. And I, for one, am very much looking forward to seeing what James Gunn and Peter Safran do moving forward with this franchise. Bring on Superman Legacy. Anyway, guys, those are all my thoughts and opinions on Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. But what did you guys think of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? Have you had a chance to check it out yet? Comment down below and let me know. And if you're new here and you haven't heard, we have a goal on this channel. We want to hit 2,500 subscribers before the end of the year. We are so very close to making it, but we need your help to get there, guys. So if you like talking about DC movies, if you like talking about DCEU, DCU in the future, or just movies in general, we do that all the time on this channel. You're in the right place. Consider hitting that subscribe button before you make your way out. We'd love to have you join our community. As always, guys, thank you so much for hearing me out, and I hope to talk to you guys again real soon.